Greetings, everyone. I'm Joseph Solis-Mullen. I'm a professor of history and political science at Spring Arbor University. I teach economics at Jackson College. I'm the Ralph Rako Fellow at the Libertarian Institute. I did my graduate work at Missouri and Illinois, and I did my undergraduate at Spring Arbor, where I now teach. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about today about some work I've been doing, because I started my dissertation almost the minute that I got to graduate school, because I knew what I wanted to do, because I had already identified the gap in the literature that I wanted to fill. This is kind of interesting, because when you're doing your master's and other graduate work, you're basically learning everything everyone else has already said about a certain subject. And then when you do your PhD, you're trying to find something that no one else has talked about, or you're challenging something someone else said that no one else has challenged before. So that's basically what goes on there. And I realized that the period 1865 to 1898 in U.S. foreign policy had for a long time basically been neglected. There was sort of a traditional historiography that was kind of encapsulated by Teddy Roosevelt's books on it, Bemis, Bailey, and then it had been eventually challenged by the revisionists like Williams and Lefebvre. All great stuff. But I noticed that there was one thing that this, frankly, kind of neglected area, because it had been completely neglected almost entirely until the 60s and 70s. Although I think Williams might have, I think Williams' first book was in the 50s. No one had, it was all about U.S. intervention in the Pacific, in Asia, in Latin America, which was all great. And, they give that economic perspective, which was all great. But I noticed that they did not at all, no one had really talked about Washington's attitude towards the European nationalist movements at this time. And so there was one case where someone had, and it had to do with nationalist movements in the Balkans. But it was a scholarly article devoted to Schuyler, and that was written 50 years ago. And it's a great article, and I cite it in my chapter on that because it's a terrific article. But no one had, first of all, almost no one had written about Washington's response and strategic thinking regarding those European nationalist movements. And certainly no one had taken that as the focus of an extended study where they look at Ireland, Italy, Germany, the Balkans, all of these. So that's what I did. And again, I started almost as soon as I got to graduate school, because I'd kind of stumbled on it. As a result of reading Rothbard's monograph on Wall Street banks and U.S. foreign policy, because he picks up in 1898, and that's kind of where most of them pick up. They're like, oh, and now America is expansionist. And that didn't seem to jive with me. Nothing just kind of materializes out of nowhere, just erupts unexpectedly. No, there clearly had to have been antecedents, and I started studying that, and so there were indeed antecedents to the Blue Water Leap in 1898 and all that other stuff. And then I located that gap in the literature. So that was all great. And then as I was doing it, though, I realized what I should do is contextualize this. And so I did chapters on all the major European nationalist movements, from Greece to Italy to all those. Then I did a chapter on Latin America broadly, which has been pretty comprehensively studied. The Pacific, which has been studied pretty comprehensively broadly. But then in the class on modern East Asian history, I looked at the Burlingame Treaty. And I decided to make that an appendix. There are four appendices in my dissertation, which I know Scott is waiting for me to turn this thing into a book. He's been waiting so patiently. But so I decided to make this an appendice to the Latin America chapter, because the Burlingame Treaty is a really singular treaty. And I thought it really fit very well with Washington's approach towards the European nationalist movements. There was an incredible amount of sympathy for the sovereignty of the people. Now, The European corollary of the Monroe Doctrine, though, said, hey, listen, if you European powers stay out of colonizing the Americas, we'll stay out of Europe. But there was no such reticence about engaging in the Pacific. And so during a period of unequal treaties, the Burlingame Treaty was an equal treaty, and it's just a really incredible singular expression of sort of the liberal ideal. And so I chronicle its making and its unmaking because it collapsed due to domestic political pressures, anti-Chinese immigration sentiment, as well as geopolitical pressure to ape what the European powers were doing. So that's what I did, and so I'm hopeful that this thing will be done soon. I have one more chapter that I realized I need to write on the Amerindians, so that's pretty much what I've been up to. Thanks all so much. Look forward to talking to you again soon.